Hello, this is Michael Paul with the New Orleans Scottish Rite College. I'd like to share with you some recent game-changing Masonic discoveries. These findings change our understanding of aspects of early Louisiana Freemasonry and the development of certain Masonic rituals in Louisiana. It also identifies areas where we have had little to no knowledge. History can truly sometimes be lost to the point that we are not even aware of things that might be unknown. We can truly sometimes be in darkness. To fully appreciate the impact of these discoveries, let me start at the beginning and try to tie everything together. The early 1990s were a time of both constant activity and frustrating setbacks for me as a Masonic researcher. I had undertaken the task of delving into the history of early Louisiana and Scottish Rite Masonry. It became clear that both histories were tied. The period was marked by an abundance of work and a number of discoveries. However, it was also a time of frustration, as many of the necessary original documents and records simply could not be located. It became unreasonable that so many of these documents were simply lost. It became necessary to consider that many were deliberately destroyed. It's difficult to understand why anyone would knowingly destroy any historical records. Even if something was done by mistake or was actually bad, a record of the events can show why such an opinion was held, and maybe through education give hope that it will never be repeated. But to destroy records takes on a sinister tone, as we can give the clear appearance of not caring about the people or the history, and only wanting our way and our opinion as the only one remembered. But this is exactly what seems to have happened in the mid-1800s in Louisiana Freemasonry. To look back at the time is most disturbing. But this video's main focus is not the unfortunate battles in Louisiana Masonry of the mid-1800s. To learn more about these events, please follow the links in the description to several more videos and sources on Louisiana Masonry in the mid-1800s. During the early 1990s, I had the pleasure of collaborating with Arturo de Hoyos on several Scottish Rite and New Orleans Masonic research projects. Our journey led us to the House of the Temple, where we meticulously combed through records in search of historical gems. It was during this time that a past master from one of the New Orleans Scottish Rite craft lodges reached out to me with a remarkable find, the original 1844 handwritten German language ritual of Germania Lodge number 46. This is one of the 10 Scottish Rite craft lodges in New Orleans that comprise the 16th Masonic District of the Grand Lodge of Louisiana. This 1844 ritual had been in use until the lodge transitioned to English in the 1940s. The brother needed another brother who could read and write German in order to translate the ritual into English. Fortunately, Brother Art was fluent in German. Art translated the ritual, and something unexpected was found. In Art's foreword, he explained that whoever translated the original text into German must have taken rituals from the York Rite, Scottish Rite, and French or modern rites and blended them together, making it a ritual that contained elements of the three rituals. It was a unique, eclectic ritual. The question was, why? Why did they create a ritual that contained elements of the three rituals worked in Louisiana? No answer was provided in the ritual or available records or history books. The answer to this question is just another of the many unanswered questions due to the loss of so many records. In trying to answer that question, we speculated that this German-speaking lodge, one that was not part of the French or English-speaking communities, might have been trying to find its own identity in the New Orleans Masonic world. It seemed logical that they created their own unique ritual, which might serve as a testament or to their independence or their innovation within the Masonic tradition. We are left in the dark as to if Germania was one of a number of lodges working in this sort of ritual, or if they acted outside of the permission of the Grand Lodge. No information has been found as to what might have happened to the missing proceedings, and since the 1990s, a most diligent search has been made to locate them anywhere that was felt possible. To date, the missing proceedings, with what we expect is important and necessary information, simply do not exist. There is no suggestion at all that they were not printed or published. They just cannot be located anywhere. If the rituals were deliberately destroyed for some reason, a thorough job was done in their destruction. Clearly, what took place during those years is necessary to gain any reasonable understanding of what transpired. It is also clear that important events did transpire during the years where no proceedings exist. So, with nothing else, the best answer seemed to be that Germania created their own unique ritual, and this ritual was used by them until the 1940s, when they switched to English and a standard Scottish Rite craft ritual. While most of the proceedings of the Grand Lodge of Louisiana from the mid-1830s to 40s have not been located, many other discoveries have been made. The period of the mid-1830s to mid-1850s was an important time in Louisiana Masonry. Events during that time have gone into shaping today's Louisiana Masonry, no matter if the events are known or understood. Louisiana York Rite Mason John Gedge led an actual revolt in the Grand Lodge of Louisiana, creating a second, very irregular Grand Lodge in the late 1840s and forcing a merger with the Grand Lodge of Louisiana in 1850. As surprising as it may seem, Gedge created his own Grand Lodge, forced a merger with the Grand Lodge of Louisiana, and then became Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Louisiana in 1851. So much changed with that merger. This present discussion, however, deals with the discovery of a situation existing prior to this 1850 takeover, and a situation that may have wanted to be forgotten by the new Gedge Grand Lodge of Louisiana. For more information on the Gedge takeover in 1850, please see my book, The Scottish Rite Papers, as many of the discoveries have been published in that book. What became clear is that many aspects of Louisiana Masonry were felt to be unacceptable to the ancient York Masons of the time, and they wanted to change a number of these aspects, and they also wanted some aspects forgotten. One area that was felt to be unacceptable were the non-York Rite craft lodges that were working in Louisiana. The 1833 proceedings show a change in the Grand Lodge law, making 3 Masonic rites acceptable for lodges to work in under the Grand Lodge. The ancient York Masons felt that only the York Rite craft ritual should be acceptable. A period of extreme unrest followed the 1850 takeover by the York Masons, but it was cut short beginning in 1853 with a devastating yellow fever epidemic hitting the New Orleans area. Most all of the new Grand Lodge leadership, including John Gedge, were killed during this epidemic, with many on both sides dying. Compromises were then sought, and it seemed that out of a devastating epidemic came a period of peace. This, however, may have been an illusion, as new discoveries show the extent of missing documents and records, with most all centered on the most controversial times. It seems that there was a desire to destroy any record of practices that were felt to be unacceptable to the York Rite Masons. Being aware that so much history was missing and that complete answers could not always be expected, the search for documents continued during the 1990s. A number of discoveries were made and are discussed in other videos or books. One discovery in particular involved Perfect Union Lodge Number 1. Let me explain. The Masonic Service Association, in their publication, the Short Talk Bulletin of November 1957, and also a number of other Masonic publications in the years following, a paper titled "Some Lodges Are Different" was published. The paper claimed that somewhere between 25 and about 80 craft lodges working under several U.S. Grand Lodges worked in the Scottish Rite craft ritual. 10 such lodges are correctly said to be working in this ritual under the Grand Lodge of Louisiana. but up to 80 such lodges in the U.S.? It seemed a stretch, but it was more of a curiosity instead of a matter connected to my research. But then, Perfect Union Lodge number 1 in New Orleans became involved. There seemed to be a Louisiana connection to a reported Scottish Rite Craft Lodge in San Francisco, Perfect Union number 17. In 1850, the Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Louisiana was Lucien Herman. He was also at the same time the sitting Worshipful Master of Perfect Union Lodge number 1 in New Orleans. With that merger, or takeover, of the Grand Lodge of Louisiana by the Gedge Group, Lucien left New Orleans, moved to San Francisco, and helped create Perfect Union Lodge number 17 under the newly created Grand Lodge of California. It has been reported that Lucien brought with him Perfect Union number 1's ritual. Why most Worshipful Brother Herman did such a thing has never been fully explained. Perfect Union number 17 in San Francisco is named in this Short Talk Bulletin as being one of the U.S. lodges working in the Scottish Rite craft ritual. That's very interesting, but with just a little thought, a problem exists with that bit of information. The New Orleans Perfect Union Lodge number 1 has always been known as the oldest York Rite Lodge in Louisiana. Today it clearly works in the York Rite or American Web ritual. The San Francisco Perfect Union number 17 Lodge was reported in a major U.S. Masonic publication to be a lodge working in the Scottish Rite craft ritual, and their French language ritual was reported to be given to them by Lucien Herman of Perfect Union number 1 in New Orleans. What exactly does this information mean? Should we understand this to mean that the Worshipful Master of Perfect Union number 1, always understood to be a York Rite Lodge, gave this just created California Lodge a French language Scottish Rite craft ritual from one of the New Orleans Scottish Rite Lodges? Or does it mean that Herman gave this new lodge Perfect Union number 1's actual ritual, and that this ritual establishes that the oldest York Rite Lodge in Louisiana actually worked in the Scottish Rite craft ritual? Well, actually, we can't really prove either with only these available reports. We can't use logic either, as there is just not enough information. Without more evidence, we can't really prove anything more than most Worshipful Brother Herman gave a new lodge a ritual. Since Perfect Union has no surviving pre-1850 rituals and next to no early documents or minutes, could this, as suggested, mean that Perfect Union number 1 worked in the Scottish Rite craft ritual prior to the 1850s or 60s? Yes, it is possible, but proving that is a difficult task. You see, with only this information, it is just as logical for Brother Herman to have given a new lodge any ritual that he had in his possession, as it is that he gave them Perfect Union's own ritual. His giving a ritual in itself does not prove that the ritual given was Perfect Union's ritual, although in fairness, and given the events in New Orleans at that time, it is suggestive of that. Compounding the problem is that I have not seen any statement from him saying that this ritual was Perfect Union number 1's ritual, or anything at all about the origin of the ritual. There was nothing to tip the scales. That is where the situation stood for a few years. And then everything changed. This past August, I was invited to be an online panelist for a symposium held by the Grand Lodge of California. The subject was Scottish Rite craft lodges. In a promotion piece, I noticed that Worshipful Brother Sebastian Tavo, a member of San Francisco's Perfect Union Lodge number 17, would also be a panelist. When I saw this, I planned on talking a bit with Brother Tavo about his lodge and a paper that he and Worshipful Brother George Viu wrote for Herodom Volume 30. I wanted to see if I could confirm the reports of Perfect Union number 17 using a Scottish Rite craft ritual. In speaking with Brother Tavo before the symposium, I was not prepared for what he told me. Brother Tavo told me that he knew about the reports that Perfect Union number 17 worked in a Scottish Rite ritual, but he could confirm that it was not the case. I was a bit surprised, but realized that Perfect Union number 1 in New Orleans had always been identified as a York Rite Lodge. It was only a theory, at least as far as I knew, that the California Lodge was a Scottish Rite craft lodge. But then Brother Tavo told me that while it was not exactly a Scottish Rite Lodge, it also was not exactly a York Rite or French Rite Lodge either. I was a bit confused, and then the brother told me that it was a blend or mixing of York, Scottish, and French rites. Now I was surprised, and I asked him if he was sure. He said yes, that he was sure. I asked if he meant that it was like the original Germania ritual. The brother didn't seem to know about the original Germania ritual, but said that the Perfect Union ritual did contain elements from those three rituals. I asked him if the ritual came to them in French. He said that it did. I needed a little time to process all this information. The revelation that the Perfect Union Lodge number 17 in San Francisco worked in such a ritual, and that it was brought to them by the worshipful master of Perfect Union Lodge number 1 in New Orleans, changed the situation and balance of information. It forces us to reconsider a number of important aspects of pre-1850 Louisiana Freemasonry. A thorough de Hoyos' translation of Germania's 1844 German language ritual gave us very new and unexpected information. Nothing about this ritual was ever published in any of those early Louisiana Masonic histories. No other lodge was known to work in such a ritual. The only logical explanation at that time was that the ritual was unique to Germania. It was supposed that the German Masons of New Orleans felt that since they were not part of the English or French-speaking New Orleans Masonic community, they should have their own Masonic ritual and one of their liking. But for a ritual of the same nature to be associated with Perfect Union number 1 in New Orleans changes greatly what we know about early Louisiana Freemasonry. So, if the Perfect Union Lodge in New Orleans worked in the very same sort of ritual, except in French, what does this mean? Well, it takes the whole theory that Germania worked in their personal ritual simply because they wanted their own unique mark or identity and throws it out of the window. This would not be an isolated ritual used by just one rogue lodge. If both Perfect Union and Germania worked in the same sort of eclectic ritual, it requires us to explore if other lodges did as well. This new information has opened a very important door into what we know and believe about early Louisiana Masonry. What else don't we know about pre-1850 Louisiana Freemasonry? Let's stop for a moment and look at what we know of the situation. If we look at the available existing Grand Lodge of Louisiana proceedings, there is some interesting information that we can find. If we look at the 1833 proceedings, we can find that 3 categories are available for lodges: York Rite, Scottish Rite, and French or Modern Rite. Charters were given to lodges in the right of their choice. This 1833 new constitution of the Grand Lodge was an attempt to satisfy an unhappy group of lodges who disagreed over lodges working in the various rites of Freemasonry. I'm going to put up some images from selections of several of the surviving Grand Lodge of Louisiana proceedings. To properly understand the significance of the California Perfect Union number 17 ritual and some of the background, we need to reevaluate some of what we already believe that we know. I'll be focusing only on the founding lodges of the Grand Lodge and Germania number 46. These lodges are representatives of the others for this presentation. The 5 original lodges that created the Grand Lodge of Louisiana were Perfect Union, Charity, Concord, Perseverance, and Etoile Polea. That number was reduced by 1, with Charity going dark in 1821. The 1833 proceedings list Perfect Union, Concord, Perseverance, and Etoile Polea in the York Rite section. But surprisingly, Etoile Polaire, and also sometimes listed under their English name, Polar Star, is also surprisingly listed in both the Scottish Rite and French or Modern Rite sections. In the York Rite category, Etoile Polaire is identified with the number 5, which was their original number. But in both the Scottish Rite and French or Modern Rite versions, it carries the number 1. In the section identified as Days of Sittings of the Lodges Sitting in New Orleans, Etoile Polaire number 5, York Rite, met on the first Sunday of every month. Etoile Polaire number 1, Scottish Rite, met on the second Sunday of every month, and Etoile Polaire number 1, French Rite, on the third Sunday of every month. Etoile Polaire essentially split into 3 lodges, each with their own set of offices, and each version meeting on a different day. No reason for their doing this is given in the proceedings, and no minutes are known to exist to explain this action. Etoile Polaire was the only lodge to so divide itself for the various rites. It is very clearly a very unique situation that is left wholly unexplained. This situation with Etoile Polaire dividing itself into 3 versions of itself and working in 3 different rites is completely unlike any situation that exists today or that we know of in the past. What is clear from these proceedings is that very unusual situations existed that are not explained in the proceedings. It would seem dangerous to form firm or unchangeable opinions based on situations that may have existed with no explanation, even unusual situations. So let's see if any other unusual situations existed, either explained or unexplained. The next set of proceedings known to exist is the 1842 proceedings. In these proceedings, we see Etoile Polaire only in the Scottish Rite section. There is no information as to what happened to the York or French Rite versions of Etoile Polaire. We can assume that at some time between 1833 and 1842, the York and French Rite Etoile Polaire lodges ceased to exist. But this is only a guess. Many other decisions could have been made, and the situation could have changed in a number of different ways. We just don't know. Why this situation changed is also completely unknown. Perfect Union, Concord, and Perseverance remained in the York Rite section. The next proceedings that we find is the 1845 proceedings, and the 4 surviving founders of the Grand Lodge all remained in the same sections as in the 1842 proceedings. But this 1845 proceedings marks the first appearance of Germania Lodge number 46, the German-speaking lodge with the eclectic ritual created 1 year earlier. Germania is listed in the York Rite section of the proceedings. Germania is listed as a York Rite lodge in the 1845, 46, 47, 48, and 49 proceedings. No mention at all is made in any of the proceedings as to its unique ritual. So, why did Germania consider itself a York Rite lodge when it did not have a true York Rite ritual? No answer is provided. So, let's examine everything a bit closer now. Germania worked in an eclectic ritual that was a blend of the York, Scottish, and French rites. Initially, it was assumed that the unknown editor or editors and translator took the 3 approved rituals in Louisiana, selected sections from each that he or they desired, and translated them into German for the Germania ritual. This was assumed to have been done to give Germania a unique, personalized ritual. We now find evidence that Lucien Herman, the sitting worshipful master of Perfect Union number 1 in New Orleans, and sitting Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Louisiana, brought a French language version of the same sort of unique ritual for the creation of Perfect Union number 17 in San Francisco. Why would he bring that ritual? We need to stop and think about this for a minute. Let's take the position, for the moment, that Germania was the only lodge with this sort of unique eclectic ritual. If the suggestion is that, for some reason, Lucien Hermann brought with him a copy of Germania's ritual to California to create this new lodge, that doesn't really tip the logic scales. Why would he do that? For one thing, Germania's ritual was in German. The ritual Lucien brought with him was in French. Lucien's father was born in Germany, so Lucien would likely have been able to read Germania's German language ritual, but why would he translate it into French? It would not have been a small job. And to what end? I have seen no statements from him or anyone about any of this situation. In addition, it seems that most of Perfect Union No. 17's early records have been lost to the 1906 San Francisco earthquake and the resulting destruction. So, if Brother Hermann was so impressed with the Germania ritual that he wanted to use it for this new lodge over Perfect Union No. 1's ritual or any other ritual, then why wasn't this new lodge named Germania rather than Perfect Union? It doesn't pass the probability test. But if this was the ritual used by Perfect Union in New Orleans as well as Germania, then it changes so much of what we know and believe about early New Orleans Freemasonry. There is at least a whole chapter that we knew nothing about. Was this a known and used ritual that the Gedge group wanted for some reason to destroy any record of? We don't know. Why would Perfect Union use this ritual? We don't know. Why did Germania use it? We don't know. Who else used it? We don't know. When did it begin being used? Again, we don't know. What else don't we know? See the problem? Germania was a new lodge. From existing records, the 1844 ritual was used at the creation of the lodge. For this to have been their original ritual, then it would have to have had been created prior to the creation of Germania. There are no known existing records to show why Germania chose this ritual or who created it. But while it is possible, why would Germania copy the ritual of Perfect Union? I don't know of any strong connection between the lodges that would make Germania want to follow the lead of Perfect Union. As for the other way around, I find it very improbable that Germania would have created the ritual and then Perfect Union, the senior of the lodges, would have copied it from Germania at some point after 1844. Too much is simply unknown, but there is another interesting fact and theory. Germania Lodge No. 46 is the daughter lodge of Perseverance Lodge No. 4. Perseverance is also one of the senior founding lodges of the Grand Lodge. Germania was created out of German-speaking members of Perseverance. Perseverance initially, like the other founding lodges of the Grand Lodge, identified itself as York Rite. But what did they understand that to mean? Interestingly enough, today, Perseverance Lodge No. 4, along with Germania 46, are lodges of the Scottish Rite 16th District. They work in the Scottish Rite ritual. From the time of its existence until the 1850 merger, which ended lodges identifying themselves as anything other than York Rite, Germania identified itself by choice as York Rite. Why? Is it possible that this eclectic ritual was the ritual of choice by a number of the New Orleans area lodges, including Perseverance? Given what we have learned of Perfect Union, yes, it is possible. Is it possible that this eclectic ritual was felt to be the York Rite? Yes, that's also possible. If this is so, then the Masons who created Germania might not have felt that they were creating a new ritual, but continuing the same ritual as their mother lodge, only in German. Is it possible that some felt that a ritual which blended the three rites might be more acceptable to everyone? Is it possible that perseverance at some point began working in this eclectic ritual along with perfect union and maybe even concord? And what do we know about the founding lodges? As for Concord, a lodge we have not looked at much in this presentation, we have very little information about it that can be verified through minutes and records. But we do know that Concord merged with Perfect Union in 1879. It would seem that the lodges were of similar mind, but that's dangerous to assume just because of a merger. For example, Perfect Union itself merged with Marian Lodge number 68 in 1886. Did they become of like mind? Marian was, at the time of the merger, the largest lodge under the Grand Lodge. It also was one of the John Gedge lodges that was brought into the Grand Lodge at the time of the 1850 merger or takeover of the Grand Lodge by the Gedge Group. Why did these two lodges merge? It's not clear. At the time of this merger, it seems Perfect Union was floundering, and with this merger, Perfect Union switched from French to English. It would also seem the perfect time to change rituals. With this merger, Perfect Union number 1 may truly have become a York Rite Lodge. This merger itself is worthy of considerable research. As for Perseverance, while initially York Rite, their displeasure with the new John Gedge Grand Lodge was expressed when it followed the lead of Etoile and withdrew from the Grand Lodge to pass under the jurisdiction of the Supreme Council of Louisiana in 1858. Perseverance did, however, return to the jurisdiction of the Grand Lodge in 1860, but from that time onward identified itself, even if only by ritual and spirit, as a Scottish Rite Lodge. It seems that how a lodge was viewed became very important. Perseverance is today one of the lodges of the Scottish Rite 16th Masonic District. Germania, while maintaining a York Rite classification prior to 1850, is today also a part of the 16th District and works in a clearly Scottish Rite ritual. There is no question that today Germania identifies itself as Scottish Rite. So, did Germania get their eclectic ritual from Perseverance? That's an interesting question. While I can't prove it, I believe that's the most logical answer. And then there is Etoile. Etoile has an amazing and mostly obscure history, so very much more research needs to be done on this lodge and its history. For just a sampling of one aspect of its amazing history, have a look at the video When Masonic and Civil Law Collide. A link to this video is in the description. I can tell you without hesitation that of all the lodges presently under the jurisdiction of the Grand Lodge of Louisiana, this lodge needs, and I mean needs, far more research and study. We have only scratched the surface of its story. So, what can be proven? Well, because of the many missing records and documents and the sometimes questionable information that is provided in the existing records, I find the word proven to be almost subjective. I'm uncomfortable identifying almost anything concerning early Louisiana Masonry as a fact. Let me give you an example. If we look at the existing Grand Lodge proceedings from 1845 to 1849, Perfect Union, Concord, and Germania are all listed as lodges of the York Rite. Nothing else, just York Rite. However, Perseverance and Etoile are listed in the 1845 to 1848 proceedings as at the three rites. No explanation as to what that means is given. The 1849 proceedings have Perseverance as York Rite accumulating and Etoile as Scotch Rite accumulating. Now, Scotch Rite is the old New Orleans way of saying Scottish Rite. But what does all this mean? Like the term at the three rites, I have no idea what accumulating meant to these old New Orleans Masons, and no information is given as to how they understood it in the proceedings. I can make a guess, but that guess and $5 will only get me a cup of coffee. It is clear that Louisiana had unique ways of doing and understanding various aspects of Freemasonry. to assume the meaning of anything based on how things are done or understood elsewhere could lead to a great misunderstanding of the accurate history. So, how do we properly understand the information in these proceedings? The lack of explanation is itself almost misleading. Is this why these proceedings still exist? Because the information given is at best unclear? Is the information necessary to understand the meaning of these phrases in proceedings that we no longer have available? I don't have that answer. Does at the three rites and accumulating mean that these lodges worked in this blended ritual as Germania and likely perfect union? If so, then why are both perfect union and Germania listed only as York Rite lodges in all of these proceedings? We know that Germania and highly suspect perfect union to have worked in this blended ritual. So why are they not listed as at the three rites or accumulating? Could there still be another type of ritual of which we know nothing at all? Could this blended ritual be what the New Orleans lodges understood to be York Rite ritual? This is why the information provided requires more explanation. Explanation that is not given or was removed from the record. Because Germania's 1844 ritual came from the archives of Germania and was clearly identified as the ritual worked in the lodge records, I am comfortable saying that this was their ritual. I am comfortable saying that there was great unrest, and that translates into burning anger in Louisiana Freemasonry pre- and post-1850. I am comfortable saying that many of the missing records, minutes, and documents were destroyed by the Gedge York Masons in their belief that this was the best course of action to advance their belief as to how Masonry should exist in Louisiana. I am comfortable saying that Lucien Herman brought a French language version of the ritual used by Germania and others to San Francisco to use in the creation of Perfect Union number 17. While I can't say that beyond a shadow of a doubt what Brother Herman brought with him to California was the actual ritual of Perfect Union number 1 in New Orleans, I can say that logic dictates that it was the same ritual. I also cannot say why Brother Herman brought this ritual with him from New Orleans. I have my theories, but it would seem that a very important area for further research and study. I am comfortable saying that all actual non-York Rite elements in the New Orleans Perfect Union were burned out or destroyed when they merged with the Gedge Lodge Marion number 68. I am comfortable saying that it is very likely that Perfect Union and Perseverance used that same eclectic ritual in French. Germania, a daughter lodge of Perseverance, would have translated that ritual into German for their use. Germania seems to have followed the lead of Perseverance, even into identifying itself as a York Rite lodge in the proceedings, and then later passing into the 16th district, the Scottish Rite district. This eclectic ritual seemed to have been used by more than a few lodges from that time. It is completely unknown how many other younger lodges may have used this blended ritual or how long it was used. What is very clear, however, is that far more research needs to be done. No matter how much we believe we know about Louisiana Masonry, as well as the very early Scottish Rite, there is so much yet to discover and learn. There is one more thing that I must say before closing. In the 50 years that I have been a Louisiana Mason, I have seen some amazing, beautiful, and disturbing events. I learned long ago that so much about the history of Louisiana Freemasonry was either unknown or misunderstood. Too many held on to incorrect information like a hungry dog with a bone, simply because someone with some rank told them that this was the correct information or the way it's done. There is no doubt in my mind that at one time Louisiana Freemasonry was a shining light that was snuffed out by ignorance, falsehood, and ambition. We can do better. We can be better. We need to unlearn much of what we have learned so that we can properly understand. I fully believe that we are at the dawn of many new discoveries. Be ready. Be open. I believe that much more is coming. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy the videos, please hit the like button and subscribe to us, and support our work through Patreon. Pay us a visit to Cornerstone Book Publishers' website for outstanding Masonic education. See you next time.